Hi everyone, thanks for watching this video on ScratchTrack, the absolutely free desktop budgeting and cash flow tracking application for Windows. I know nobody wants to spend their time watching videos about budgeting software, so I'll try to be quick. The first topic we'll cover is getting and installing ScratchTrack. So I'm going to open up my browser, point it to scratchtrack.net, and the link will always be on the front page. I'll click it so it downloads. It's a relatively small file, so it's already downloaded. ScratchTrack doesn't have an installer. You just run it, but we'll copy it somewhere other than the downloads folder. A reasonable place is the documents folder. My personal preference is to throw it to my OneDrive folders so that the budget will follow me and I can work from whatever device I happen to be on. So I'm in my OneDrive documents folder. I'm going to create a budget folder and I'll throw it there. If you use Google Drive or Dropbox, any of those will work as well. If you want ScratchTrack to be on your Start menu, you can just right-click it and select Pin to Start. The other option is to run it and then right-click the icon on the taskbar and select Pin to Taskbar. And now when you close it, it sticks on the taskbar and you can click it to launch it again. And there it is in the Start menu. Before I start diving into ScratchTrack, I just want to briefly talk about envelope budgeting. ScratchTrack follows the envelope budgeting strategies. Envelope budgeting isn't anything new. If you Google, you'll find plenty of hits. One of the more prolific proponents of envelope budgeting is a guy named Dave Ramsey. You can read his articles. You'll find them pretty quickly. I agree with pretty much everything he says, right up until the point where he says that envelopes aren't a metaphor. He really wants you to roll around with envelopes stuffed with cash. I personally think that's a terrible idea. I don't think you should roll around Walmart with a big wad of cash. You should use a credit card with good rewards and be an adult about it and pay it off monthly. But anyway, you should familiarize yourself with envelope budgeting. The general idea is that you'll set aside envelopes that represent various categories like dining out, groceries, utilities, that sort of thing. You'll assign money to those envelopes, and then when those expenses come, you'll pay them from the envelope. If an envelope runs out of money, then spending in that category stops until you're able to add more money to your envelope. So the basic concept is you don't spend money that you don't have. All right, so with that covered, let's get started. I'm going to launch ScratchTrack, and just really quickly, the window in the top left is the account list. Below that is the state of the budget. You'll get context-sensitive help here, general information about your budget, and if there's any problems with your budget, they'll be displayed there as well. To the right is the list of envelopes and folders, and below that is the transaction list. All those are pretty boring right now because we don't have any data, but as we go through the workflow, we'll see data start to show up there and it'll be a little more interesting. So I'm going to add an account. We'll say it's a checking account. I'll make up some balance. Just really quickly, if you remember in envelope budgeting, we said we have envelopes that represent expense categories like dining, eating out, groceries, that sort of thing. We put dollars in those envelopes and then we pay for things from those envelopes. An in-budget account is an account whose dollars can be used to fund envelopes. So typically a checking account that you spend from would be in budget. A savings account that you don't typically spend from would be out of budget. You can still pay for things with an out of budget account, but you can't put dollars from an out of budget account into an envelope. And that'll make more sense as we go. So I'll click OK. So I've got my checking account. I'll also add a savings account. And we're doing pretty well there, we'll say. And we'll make that one out of budget. And with anything in ScratchTrack, you can right-click and get lots of options. If we've had a typo or whatever in there, we could right-click and select Edit. The pencil icon is also Edit. If you want to deposit into an account, you could click the $ icon there, or if you want to transfer money between accounts, you could click the transfer icon. We'll get into those operations later. So now that we've got our account set up, we'll define our income events. In ScratchTrack, income events are defined through folders. In this example, we'll say we're paid twice a month, so we'll create two folders. We'll say the first one is 15th paycheck because I'm paid on the 15th. We'll say my paycheck amount is typically $2,000, and we'll add another folder called 31st. We'll say that's my other paycheck, and that one's also $2,000. So basically what we've done here is told ScratchTrack that we have income twice a month. The amount of the income is $2,000. And now we can start creating envelopes inside these income folders. So we'll just kind of wing it here and create a few. We'll say we spend $500 a month on groceries. The grocery expense typically comes from checking. These are default transaction settings. You can leave them blank. If you typically pay an expense to the same payee or the same amount every time, you can fill those out. So in this case, I typically buy my groceries from Kroger, so I'll go ahead and fill in Kroger. I don't know the amount, so I'll leave that just as 0. Some other events we might, or some other expenses we might have. Internet, we'll say we spend $65 a month on that. Phone, we'll say we spend $100 on that. And again, we can fill out these default payments amount if we want. We'll say we have a car payment. We'll just make up a number here. We'll say we typically pay that to Capital One, and it's $300 a month. We'll say we have rent. We'll say our rent is $1,800 a month. So if you look, you'll see ScratchTrack is telling us we've got $2,800 budgeted against $2,000 of income. So we're over our limit of $800. That's also shown in the budget info window that we're over budget. So we'll probably want to move some of these things to the 31st paycheck. So basically this means we're going to fund these things from our 15th paycheck and they all won't fit. So we'll move our car payment to the 31st paycheck. And now we're $465 over the limit in this folder and $1,600 under the limit here. So let's move a few more things. Grocery is a good candidate. So now this folder's $35 under budget. This one's $1,100 under budget. So it's a little bit misbalanced still. We could move a few more things if we want. Obviously, this list of expenses isn't particularly complete either. You would have things like, a water bill for $125 a month, for instance. You might have an electric bill, also $125 a month. So the general idea is to get these two folders relatively balanced. And once we've done that, then our budget is in a reasonable state and we can start working. So I think you get the general idea about adding envelopes. I won't make you stare at the screen while I meticulously populate a budget. But the one topic I did want to spend a little bit of time on were savings goals. So I've got this envelope called auto insurance, and I've got it costing $100 a month. But let's say I pay that bill once every 6 months and the bill is $600. Savings goals can help us with that. What we've basically done here is told ScratchTrack that this envelope's a little bit unique. Each month, rather than setting the envelope balance to the budgeted amount, we want to keep contributing to it until it reaches $600. And we can walk through exactly what that means here now. So let's say it's the 31st and I've been paid. We want to record that paycheck. You can do it a couple ways. You can right click and select deposit, or you can click the deposit icon. My paycheck amount was $2,000. My employer will say is Employee Co. And if you want to put a description, you certainly can. We'll just say 31st paycheck. So basically, we want to add some money to our envelopes. Ahead of that, we'll take a quick peek here. A couple of things happened with our deposit. One, the balance of the checking account went up by $2,000. Two, ScratchTrack is telling us now we have $2,000 additional that we can assign to envelopes. So we're ready to fund our envelopes. There's a couple ways we can do that. We can fund every envelope inside a folder in one shot by clicking that $sign, or by right-clicking and saying assign money to envelopes. You can also adjust the balance of envelopes individually by right-clicking the envelope and selecting assign money to this envelope, or clicking the $sign on the envelope. In this case, we'll fund everything in one shot. We'll click the $sign. Basically, it's going to tell us that the available dollars for funding that we have are $2,544, and the cost to fully fund every envelope in this category is $1,500. So that all adds up. So we'll click OK. You can see a couple of things have happened. The balance of all our envelopes now is set to their budgeted amount. If we were to do this again, the balance of all the envelopes wouldn't change, except for auto insurance because it's savings goals. When you fund an envelope that's not a savings goal, ScratchTrack will set its balance to the budgeted amount. If it is a savings goal, it just keeps accumulating and adds on top of it. You can also kind of see this in the spark lines here. So auto insurance has $100, but a goal of $600. So you can see this bar is 1/6 the length of the window. The other envelopes are all fully funded, so their bars are fully across the screen. Additionally, the other thing that's changed is ScratchTrack is now telling us we have that much less available to assign to envelopes. So that all makes sense. You can also see our deposit has been recorded in the transaction window. You can right-click the transaction and select Edit Transaction, or you can double-click to edit as well. If there was a typo or you needed to change something, you could do it there. One last topic on the envelope funding is that you can not only add money to envelopes, but you can take money away. And the reason you might want to do that is if you overspend or you have extra expenses in one envelope and you feel like you can get away with spending a little bit less in another envelope, you can take money from one and put it in the other. And the way you would do that is the exact same workflow that we did before. You can either right-click and select assign money to this envelope or click the dollar sign. So in this case, we'll take $100 out of grocery and throw it back into the pool. The way you do that is, so right now we've got $500 in groceries. To fully fund it, we need $0 more because it's already at $500. So we're going to do the opposite. We're going to take $100 out. And so we're just going to tell ScratchTrack the new balance for groceries is $400. And so what that's done, you can see groceries has $100 less in its balance. There's an extra $100 available for budgeting. And so if we were overspent somewhere, we could throw that $100 into that other envelope. Of course, that means we have $100 less to spend in groceries. Okay, so we've got our envelopes funded. Let's go ahead and record some transactions. There's a couple ways you can do that. One way you can do it is by importing transactions from your bank in the Quicken Interchange format. Most financial institutions, if you go to your account view, you can export as a QIF file and ScratchTrack can import those. But we'll save that topic for another video and we'll record our transactions the more traditional way. So let's say I've got my phone bill and I've paid it. You can either right-click and select Record Expense, or you can click the receipt icon. We'll say my phone bill was $89.43. It was to AT&T. We paid it out of checking, and we'll say it's the March phone bill. So a couple of things will happen when I click OK. Our account will go down by $89.43. The phone balance will go down by that amount. This line that shows how much we have available versus our budget will go down proportionately, and we'll have a new transaction in the transaction window. So we'll click OK and see all that happening. So basically, we've got $10.57 left in phone. You can see that it's showing you that the budget is almost empty, which is probably fine. That's our main phone bill. Checking now has $2,400 in it, and we've got this new transaction, which again you can double-click or right-click to edit as needed. Okay, so we've really only got one last workflow to walk through in ScratchTrack, and that's credit card accounts. So we'll click Add Account. We'll say we got an Amazon credit card because we like the 5% back. We'll tell ScratchTrack it's a credit card account, and the balance is $0. You'll see when we do that, we've got a new folder called Credit Cards and a new envelope called Credit Card Charges. This is kind of a read-only thing, and you'll understand why as we walk through it. So let's say we took Grandma out for her birthday. We really lived it up and spent $85.67 at the Red Lobster. As with any transaction in ScratchTrack, you can set a note if you want. And the first thing you might notice is that I entered that wrong. I charged it against the checking account when I meant Amazon credit card. I don't want to start over, so I just double-clicked it, and I'm going to fix it and click OK. The next thing that you'll notice is that the dining out envelope has had $85.67 deducted from it, as you might expect, so the new balance is that less that amount. That money has been put into this credit card charges envelope. So basically what's happened is ScratchTrack has taken the money out of your dining envelope because it's not available for use anymore, and it's squirreled it away in this credit card charges envelope so that you don't accidentally spend that money for something else. The tricky bit with credit card charges is that you've bought something but you haven't actually paid for it, so the money's still sitting in your account. So the key thing here is to make sure you don't accidentally double spend that money. So to kind of get the idea for the workflow, we'll add a few more things. We'll say we went to Kroger and spent $13.85. Again, out of the Amazon credit card. Click OK. Groceries gone down by that amount. Credit card charges have gone up by that amount. We'll go out to eat one more time. We'll say we spent $14.44 at McDonald's. Again, on the Amazon credit card. So now our Amazon credit card charges are $113.96. That's reflected in a couple spots. Our positive balance in our envelope is that amount. Our Amazon credit card has a negative balance of that amount. And if you look at the transactions, they would add up to that as well. So now it's time to pay our credit card. There's a couple ways we can do that. We can right-click on the credit card count and select Pay Credit Card, or we can click this receipt icon and get to the same dialog box. ScratchTrack by default will populate the values with the balances. So our Amazon credit card, we owe $113.96. We have that same matching amount squirreled away in our envelope, and ScratchTrack is going to pay that amount to the credit card. When paying a credit card, you have to tell ScratchTrack where you're paying it from. You can pay it from any non-credit card account. In this case, we'll do checking. And if you wanted to add a description, you could. So we're going to click OK. You'll see a couple things have happened. The Amazon credit card account, as you expect, is now zero because we just paid it. This temporary holding envelope balance is also zero because we used the money from it to pay. And then we've got the transaction as well recorded. And if you had made a typo or anything, you could edit it there. And so that's basically the gist of the credit card workflow. You record the expense against the regular envelope. ScratchTrack automatically squirrels that amount away into the credit card and payment envelope. And then when you pay your credit card, the money is pulled from that envelope. And that's how credit cards work in ScratchTrack. Okay, so now we've got just a few miscellaneous things to cover in ScratchTrack. We'll go pretty quickly here. The first is transferring money between accounts. To do that, you can right-click an account and select transfer, or you can click the transfer icon, which are the two directional arrows. You just basically give it an amount to transfer from to and a description if you want it, and click OK. So in this case, we'll transfer $32 from checking to savings. We'll see that savings has gone up by $32, checking's gone down by $32, and you can see the transaction in the transaction list. If you want to just undo it, you can set it to 0, or you can edit however you see fit. The other thing I wanted to briefly touch on was the concept of hiding various things. So in ScratchTrack, there really is no delete. Deleting a piece out of a big financial picture is tricky and generally a bad idea, so we don't do it. But what we can do instead is hide something. So for instance, if we decide we actually don't want internet as part of our budget, you could choose to hide that envelope. When you hide something, if it has any money in it, it'll throw it back to the budget pool. You'll get a confirmation whether or not you want to hide it. And once it's hidden, you won't see it anymore. If you want to unhide it, there's this unhide option, and basically anything you've hidden is selectable here. So we'll see that internet comes back. The last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of a cool trick of ScratchTrack. ScratchTrack's native file format is the Excel file format. So if for whatever reason you don't want to use ScratchTrack anymore, or you want to try to continue to use ScratchTrack but pivot your data and view it in a different way, you certainly can. So scratchtrack.xlsx is the file it works from. If you load it in Excel or LibreCalc or Google Sheets or whatever spreadsheet you use, you'll get this view. The month and the year are actually editable. We've only got 1 month of data, so we really can't change it. But if you had multiple months, you could flip and view the details for that particular month. The first sheet is just kind of a budget overview. Then the secondary sheets are things like accounts, folders, categories, which are the envelopes, transactions. And the last thing is settings. Had we imported things with the quick and interchange format and we explicitly cleaned up some of the weird names that come in from banks into human readable names, they would appear here.